The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as King Charles made his way through the corridors with purposeful strides. His private secretary, James Morrison, struggled to keep pace while clutching a leather portfolio filled with official documents that required the king's immediate attention. Charles had been awake since dawn, reviewing a particular matter that had been weighing heavily on his mind for weeks. The decision he was about to announce would send shockwaves through the royal household and beyond. As he entered his private study, the familiar scent of old leather and polished wood reminded him of the weight of tradition that surrounded every choice he made as monarch. The king settled behind his mahogany desk, the same one his mother had used for decades. On the surface lay a single document that would change everything. It was an official decree, beautifully calligraphed on cream-colored paper with the royal seal pressed into deep blue wax. The honor he was about to bestow was unprecedented in modern royal history. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, had captured the hearts of the British people with her grace, dedication, and unwavering commitment to her royal duties. Over the years, she had transformed from a commoner into one of the most beloved members of the royal family. Her charitable work, particularly with children's causes and mental health awareness, had earned her respect both within the palace walls and among the public. Charles had been observing Kate's evolution with growing admiration. Unlike some members of the family who had struggled with the pressures of royal life, Kate had embraced her role with natural elegance and genuine warmth. She possessed a rare quality that reminded him of his late mother, the ability to connect with people from all walks of life while maintaining the dignity expected of royalty. The honor he was planning to bestow upon Kate was one that had been traditionally reserved for members of the royal family by birth, not marriage. It was a recognition that would elevate her status within the monarchy in ways that had never been seen before. Charles understood that this decision would ruffle feathers, particularly with his wife Camilla, who had her own ideas about the hierarchy within the royal family. Camilla had worked tirelessly to establish her position as queen consort after years of being seen as an outsider. She had finally gained acceptance from the public and had carved out her own role within the royal duties. The queen consort had her own circle of advisors and had been instrumental in modernizing certain aspects of royal protocol. However, Charles felt that Kate represented the future of the monarchy. Her popularity with younger generations and her ability to make the royal family seem more relatable and accessible were exactly what the institution needed to remain relevant in the modern world. The king believed that by honoring Kate in this extraordinary way, he would be securing the monarchy's future and ensuring its continued connection with the British people. The morning meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and Charles knew that both Camilla and Kate would be present along with senior royal advisors. He had deliberately kept the nature of his announcement secret, knowing that advance knowledge would lead to intense discussions and possible attempts to dissuade him from his chosen course of action. As the clock struck 10, Charles heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching his study. The heavy oak door opened, and his private secretary announced the arrival of the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales. Both women entered with smiles, expecting a routine discussion about upcoming royal engagements and charitable events. Camilla, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit with pearl accessories, took her usual seat near the window. Her expression was relaxed, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had finally found her place within the complex dynamics of royal life. Kate, wearing a sophisticated burgundy dress that perfectly complemented her dark hair, settled into the chair across from the king's desk. The room fell silent as Charles picked up the official document. Both women noticed the formal nature of the paper and the gravity in the king's expression. They exchanged curious glances, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The king cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of royal tradition. What happened next would test the bonds of family loyalty, challenge established protocols, and create a rift that would echo through the halls of the palace for months to come. The honor that Charles was about to announce would not only surprise Kate, but would also ignite a fury in Camilla that no one in the room was prepared to witness. Charles held the document steady in his hands, his eyes moving between the two most important women in his life. The silence in the room was almost tangible as he prepared to deliver news that would reshape the royal hierarchy in ways no one had anticipated. "I have called you both here today," Charles began, his voice measured and deliberate, "to share a decision that I believe will strengthen our monarchy and honor someone who has proven herself to be an exceptional member of our family." Kate shifted slightly in her chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had learned over the years to maintain her composure regardless of the circumstances, a skill that had served her well during countless public appearances and private family moments. Camilla leaned forward slightly, her interest clearly piqued by the formal tone of the king's words. "Catherine," Charles continued, "using Kate's formal name, your dedication to your royal duties, your compassion for the British people, and your unwavering support of this family have not gone unnoticed. You have transformed the way the public views our institution, bringing a fresh perspective while respecting our deepest traditions." Kate felt her heart rate quicken as she began to sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. She had received recognition before, awards, honorary titles, and public acknowledgments. But the king's tone suggested that this was different. The formal setting and the presence of official documents indicated that whatever was coming would be significant. Camilla's expression remained neutral, but those who knew her well would have noticed the slight tightening around her eyes. As queen consort, she had grown accustomed to being consulted on major decisions affecting the royal family. The fact that she was hearing about this announcement at the same time as Kate was unusual and slightly concerning. "Therefore," Charles announced, his voice growing stronger with conviction, "I am pleased to bestow upon you the Order of the Royal Victorian Chain, the highest personal honor that I can grant as monarch." The words hung in the air like electricity before a storm. Kate's eyes widened in genuine shock and surprise. The Order of the Royal Victorian Chain was not just any honor. It was the most prestigious recognition within the royal gift, typically reserved for heads of state, senior members of the royal family by birth, and individuals who had provided extraordinary service to the crown over many decades. Kate had received various honors throughout her years as a royal, but nothing came close to this level of recognition. The Royal Victorian Chain was so exclusive that only a handful of people received it each decade. Previous recipients included foreign monarchs, governors general, and only the most senior members of the British royal family. "Your Majesty," Kate managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, "I am deeply honored and completely overwhelmed by your generosity." Camilla sat frozen in her chair, the implications of Charles's announcement washing over her like a cold wave. She had received the Royal Victorian Order when she married Charles, but the Royal Victorian Chain was an entirely different level of recognition. It placed Kate in a category that very few people ever reached, and it did so in a way that felt sudden and unexpected. The queen consort had spent years carefully building her position within the royal family. She had worked to gain public acceptance, establish her own charitable causes, and create a role that complemented rather than competed with other family members. This announcement felt like a seismic shift in the balance of power and recognition within the family structure. Charles seemed to sense the tension in the room, but he was determined to explain his reasoning. "Catherine, this honor reflects not just your current contributions but my confidence in your future role as a leader within our family. You represent the bridge between our historical traditions and our modern relevance." The king's words were carefully chosen, but they carried implications that Camilla found deeply troubling. The suggestion that Kate represented the future leadership of the royal family seemed to diminish Camilla's own role as queen consort. She had worked tirelessly to establish herself as Charles's partner in his royal duties, and now she felt as though her position was being undermined. Kate, meanwhile, was struggling to process the magnitude of what was happening. She understood the significance of the honor and felt genuinely grateful for the king's recognition. However, she was also acutely aware of the delicate family dynamics at play and could sense the tension radiating from Camilla's direction. The private secretary, who had been standing quietly near the door, stepped forward with a velvet-lined box containing the actual chain. The Royal Victorian Chain itself was a magnificent piece of craftsmanship, featuring alternating white and red enameled roses representing the union of the houses of York and Lancaster, connected by intricate golden links and crowned with the royal cipher. As Charles lifted the chain from its case, the weight of the moment became even more apparent. This was not just a ceremony, it was a declaration of Kate's elevated status within the royal family, and a signal to the world about who the king viewed as essential to the monarchy's future. Camilla finally found her voice, though it carried a carefully controlled edge. Charles, this is quite unexpected. Such an honor typically requires extensive consultation with senior advisors and consideration of precedent. The king's expression remained steady as he looked at his wife. The decision has been made after considerable thought and reflection. Catherine's contributions warrant this recognition, and I believe history will prove this choice to be wise. The battle lines were now clearly drawn in the elegant study of Buckingham Palace. The atmosphere in the king's study had shifted dramatically from formal politeness to barely concealed tension. Camilla's carefully maintained composure was beginning to crack as the full implications of Charles's announcement became clear. Her fingers gripped the arms of her chair, and her usual warm smile had been replaced by a tight-lipped expression that spoke volumes. Kate found herself in an impossible position. While she was deeply honored by the king's recognition, she could feel the waves of displeasure emanating from Camilla. Years of navigating royal family dynamics had taught her to read between the lines, and she understood that this moment was about much more than a simple honor ceremony. Charles proceeded with the investiture, seemingly oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the growing tension in the room. He approached Kate with the royal Victorian chain, its golden links catching the morning light streaming through the tall windows. Catherine, it is my privilege to present you with this honor in recognition of your exceptional service to the crown and the British people. As the king placed the chain around Kate's shoulders, she felt the weight of both the physical honor and the emotional complexity of the moment. The chain was heavier than she had expected, its precious metals and intricate craftsmanship representing centuries of royal tradition. She understood that she was now part of an extremely exclusive group of individuals who had received this highest personal honor from the monarch. Thank you, Your Majesty, Kate said softly, her voice filled with genuine emotion. I pledge to continue serving with the same dedication and commitment that you have recognized today. Camilla watched the ceremony with growing agitation. She had spent years working to establish her place within the royal hierarchy, overcoming public skepticism and media criticism to finally gain acceptance as Charles's wife and partner. The Queen Consort had carved out her own areas of responsibility, focusing on literacy programs, supporting victims of domestic violence, and championing various charitable causes. The investiture completed, Charles returned to his desk while Kate remained standing, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The Royal Victorian chain felt both empowering and burdensome as she realized that her role within the royal family had been fundamentally altered by this single gesture. Camilla could no longer contain her concerns. Charles, I must express my surprise at the timing of this announcement. As your queen consort, I would have expected to be consulted about such a significant decision. This honor carries implications that extend far beyond a simple recognition ceremony. The king's expression hardened slightly as he addressed his wife's objections. Camilla, the Royal Victorian chain is within my personal gift as monarch. I am not required to seek approval or consultation for decisions regarding this particular honor. My choice of Catherine reflects my assessment of her contributions and her importance to the future of our institution. Kate felt increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation took on a more confrontational tone. She had witnessed royal family disagreements before, but they were usually conducted with such careful diplomacy that the underlying tensions remained hidden beneath layers of protocol and politeness. This exchange was different, more direct and potentially more damaging. I understand that the honor is within your gift, Camilla replied, her voice rising slightly despite her efforts to maintain royal composure. However, the message this sends about the hierarchy within our family is concerning. There are established protocols and traditions that govern how such recognitions are bestowed. Charles stood up from behind his desk, his height and bearing emphasizing his authority as monarch. The protocols and traditions you mention have evolved throughout our history. The monarchy's survival depends on our ability to recognize and honor those who contribute most effectively to our mission of serving the British people. The debate was revealing fundamental differences in how Charles and Camilla viewed the future direction of the royal family. The king clearly saw Kate as essential to modernizing and maintaining the relevance of the monarchy, while Camilla was concerned about preserving established hierarchies and her own position within the family structure. Kate finally felt compelled to speak, hoping to diffuse the growing tension. Perhaps I should withdraw while you both discuss this matter privately. I certainly do not wish to be the cause of any family discord. Absolutely not, Charles said firmly. You are now a recipient of the Royal Victorian chain, and you have every right to be present for any discussions about its significance. This honor was not granted lightly, and I will not allow it to be diminished by procedural objections. Camilla's frustration was becoming more apparent with each exchange. She had worked diligently to support Charles throughout his reign, adapting to her role as queen consort and accepting a position that was inherently secondary to his authority. However, this situation felt like a direct challenge to her status and influence within the family. Charles, my concerns are not merely procedural, Camilla said, her diplomatic training finally giving way to genuine emotion. This decision affects the balance of our family relationships and the public perception of our respective roles. I fear that you have not fully considered the consequences of elevating Catherine to this level without broader consultation. The king's response was swift and decisive. The consequences I have considered are the long-term health and survival of our monarchy. Catherine represents qualities and capabilities that are essential for our future success. Her connection with the public, particularly younger generations, is invaluable. The room fell silent as the implications of Charles's words sank in. He was not simply honoring Kate's past contributions. He was making a statement about his vision for the monarchy's future, and that vision clearly placed Kate in a position of extraordinary prominence and influence. The battle for royal supremacy had only just begun. The tension in the room reached a breaking point as Camilla rose from her chair, her royal composure finally cracking under the weight of her emotions. Years of careful diplomacy and measured responses gave way to raw frustration as she faced her husband across the ornate study. Charles, I have supported you through every challenge, every criticism, and every difficult decision you have faced as monarch, Camilla said, her voice trembling with barely controlled anger. I stood by you during the most difficult periods of your life, and I have worked tirelessly to earn the respect and acceptance of the British people as your queen consort. Kate stood frozen near the window, the Royal Victorian chain still gleaming around her shoulders. She felt like an unwilling participant in a family drama that was spiraling beyond anyone's control. The weight of the honor she had just received now felt like a burden as she realized the price that was being paid for the king's recognition. Charles remained behind his desk, his expression a mixture of determination and growing irritation. Camilla, your contributions to our family and our duties are not in question. However, my responsibilities as monarch require me to make decisions based on what is best for the institution, not on personal considerations or feelings. Personal considerations? Camilla's voice rose dangerously. Is that what you call the partnership we have built together? The years I have spent supporting your vision and helping you navigate the complexities of modern monarchy? The queen consort began pacing the room, her elegant heels clicking against the marble floor with sharp staccato beats that emphasized her agitation. You speak of Catherine's connection with younger generations and her value to the monarchy's future, but what about the stability and experience that I bring? What about the years I have invested in understanding our role and responsibilities? Kate finally found her voice, stepping forward with her hands clasped in front of her. Your Majesty Queen Camilla, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. I never sought this honor, and I certainly never intended for it to create conflict within the family. If my receiving this recognition is causing distress, perhaps we should reconsider. Charles's response was immediate and firm. Catherine, you will not diminish yourself or this honor because of objections that are based on jealousy, rather than legitimate concerns about protocol or tradition. The word jealousy hung in the air like a lightning bolt, striking at the heart of Camilla's emotional response. Her face flushed red as she turned to face her husband with an expression of pure fury. Jealousy? Camilla repeated, her voice now dangerously quiet. You think my concerns about proper protocol and family hierarchy are based on jealousy? Charles, I am your wife, your queen consort, and your partner in leading this monarchy. My objections are based on protecting the institution we both serve. The king stood up from his desk, his own anger finally surfacing after years of bottled-up frustrations about Camilla's resistance to change and modernization. Your objections are based on protecting your own position and influence, not on protecting the monarchy. The monarchy's survival depends on adaptation and evolution, not on maintaining rigid hierarchies that no longer serve our purposes. Kate watched in horror as the argument escalated beyond the bounds of royal decorum. She had witnessed disagreements within the family before, but they were usually conducted through subtle hints, diplomatic language, and carefully worded suggestions. This direct confrontation was unprecedented in her experience. Camilla moved closer to Charles's desk, her hands gripping the edge as she leaned forward. "You want to talk about evolution and adaptation? I have spent years evolving from being seen as the other woman to becoming an accepted and respected member of this family. I have adapted to criticism, overcome public hostility, and earned my place through dedication and service. And now you want to protect that place by limiting the recognition of others who have also earned their positions through service and dedication." Charles shot back. "Your resistance to Catherine's elevation reveals exactly the kind of thinking that could destroy our relevance with the British people." The argument was revealing deep-seated tensions that had been building for years beneath the surface of their marriage and royal partnership. Camilla felt that her hard-won position was being undermined, while Charles believed that his wife was standing in the way of necessary changes to secure the monarchy's future. Kate made another attempt to diffuse the situation. "Please, both of you, this argument is accomplishing nothing positive. Perhaps we could discuss this matter more calmly and find a solution that respects everyone's contributions and concerns." "There is nothing to discuss," Charles declared, his voice filled with royal authority. "The decision has been made, the honor has been bestowed, and it will stand. Catherine's recognition reflects her importance to our family and our institution, and I will not allow that recognition to be diminished by personal grievances." Camilla straightened up, her eyes blazing with a fury that had been years in the making. "Personal grievances? Charles, you have just demonstrated that our partnership means nothing to you when it conflicts with your other priorities. You have shown me exactly where I stand in your estimation." The Queen Consort moved toward the door, her dignity and composure returning as she prepared to make her exit. "I will not stand here and be dismissed as a jealous wife when my concerns are legitimate and my contributions have been substantial. This conversation is not over, Charles, not by a long shot." As Camilla reached for the door handle, she turned back one final time, her gaze sweeping from her husband to Kate and back again. "You may have made your decision about this honor, but you have also made other decisions today that you will come to regret." With that ominous warning, the Queen Consort left the room, the heavy oak door closing behind her with a decisive thud that seemed to echo through the palace halls. Charles and Kate were left alone in the aftermath of a confrontation that had changed everything. The silence that followed Camilla's dramatic exit was deafening. Kate remained standing near the window, the Royal Victorian chain feeling heavier with each passing moment. The morning sunlight that had earlier created such a majestic atmosphere in the king's study now seemed harsh and unforgiving, illuminating the wreckage of royal family harmony. Charles stood behind his desk, his hands pressed flat against its polished surface, staring at the door through which his wife had just departed. The king's expression revealed a complex mixture of anger, regret, and stubborn determination. Years of marriage had taught him to recognize when Camilla was truly upset, and this was far beyond anything he had witnessed before. "Your Majesty," Kate began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I feel terrible about what just happened. Perhaps there is still time to reconsider this decision before it becomes public knowledge." Charles looked up at her, his eyes reflecting both appreciation for her diplomatic instincts and frustration with the situation he had created. "Catherine, what you witnessed here today was not about the honor I bestowed upon you. It was about fundamental differences in how Camilla and I view the future of our monarchy." Kate moved away from the window, approaching the king's desk with careful, measured steps. The Royal Victorian chain caught the light with each movement, serving as a constant reminder of the controversy it had sparked. "But surely the unity of the royal family is more important than any individual recognition. If my receiving this honor is going to create lasting damage to your marriage and to family relationships, then it cannot be worth it." The king shook his head firmly, his resolve hardening rather than weakening in the face of the conflict. "Catherine, the royal family's unity cannot be built on suppressing recognition of merit and contribution. If our family cannot acknowledge and celebrate excellence when it appears, then we are not worthy of the positions we hold. Charles moved around his desk to face Kate directly, his expression intense and determined. You have transformed the way the British people view our institution. Your grace, your dedication, and your genuine care for others have brought a fresh perspective to centuries-old traditions. That contribution deserves the highest recognition I can provide. Kate felt torn between gratitude for the king's faith in her and deep concern about the family chaos that recognition had unleashed. She had spent years learning to navigate the complex dynamics of royal relationships, always careful to respect established hierarchies and avoid stepping on anyone's sensitivities. I understand your reasoning. Your Majesty, Kate replied carefully, but Queen Camilla's concerns about protocol and consultation seem valid. Perhaps there was a way to achieve the same recognition while involving her in the decision-making process. Charles's expression darkened slightly at the suggestion that he should have handled the situation differently. Camilla's objections were not really about protocol or consultation. They were about maintaining a status quo that prevents necessary change and evolution. She sees your recognition as a threat to her position, rather than an enhancement to our collective effectiveness. The king began pacing the room, his frustration evident in every step. For years I have tried to balance Camilla's need for security and recognition with the monarchy's need for modernization and adaptation. Today's confrontation has shown me that those two objectives may be incompatible. Kate watched the king's agitation with growing alarm. She had never seen him so openly frustrated with his wife, and she feared that her involvement in this situation was driving a wedge between two people who needed to present a united front to the world. Your Majesty, perhaps I should speak with Queen Camilla privately. Maybe I can help her understand that I see this honor as a responsibility to support her efforts, not to compete with them. Charles stopped pacing and looked at Kate with an expression that was both appreciative and skeptical. Catherine, I admire your diplomatic instincts, but I fear that Camilla's reaction today reveals deeper issues that cannot be resolved through private conversations. The king returned to his desk and picked up the leather portfolio that contained other official documents requiring his attention. For a moment he seemed lost in thought, weighing the personal cost of his decision against his conviction that it was the right choice for the monarchy. Camilla has always struggled with feeling secure in her position, Charles said finally, his voice carrying years of accumulated frustration. Despite all the recognition and acceptance she has received, she still feels the need to guard against any perceived threats to her status or influence. Kate felt increasingly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. She had no desire to become involved in the private dynamics of the king and queen consort's marriage, especially when those dynamics were clearly under severe strain. Perhaps, Kate suggested gently, some time in reflection will help everyone process what happened today. These kinds of misunderstandings often seem less significant after the initial emotions have settled. Charles looked at her with an expression that suggested he appreciated her optimism, but did not share it. Catherine, what happened today was not a misunderstanding. It was a fundamental clash of visions about the future direction of our family and our institution. Camilla made it clear that she views your recognition as a diminishment of her own position. The king's words carried a weight that suggested the morning's confrontation had revealed problems that went far beyond the immediate issue of the Royal Victorian chain. Kate began to realize that she had unwittingly become a symbol in a larger struggle between tradition and modernization, between established hierarchy and merit-based recognition. What do you think will happen now? Kate asked, dreading the answer, but needing to understand the full implications of the situation. Charles's expression was grim as he considered the question. I suspect that Camilla will use every resource at her disposal to undermine today's decision and to demonstrate her own importance within our family structure. She has allies among the senior staff and connections throughout the royal household who share her more traditional approach to protocol and hierarchy. The king's prediction proved to be more accurate than either he or Kate could have imagined, as events would soon demonstrate that Camilla's fury was just beginning to manifest itself throughout the palace. Within hours of the explosive confrontation in the king's study, word of the dramatic events began spreading through the labyrinthine corridors of Buckingham Palace like wildfire. The royal household staff, who had perfected the art of discreet observation and careful gossip over centuries of service, quickly sensed that something extraordinary had occurred. Camilla had retreated to her private apartments, where she was surrounded by her closest advisors and long-serving staff members, who had supported her through years of public scrutiny and family challenges. Lady Margaret Thornton, her private secretary and confidant, sat across from the Queen Consort in the elegant sitting room that had become Camilla's sanctuary within the palace. The king's decision to bestow the royal Victorian chain without consultation was unprecedented, Lady Margaret said, her voice carefully modulated to express support without openly criticizing the monarch. Such honors have traditionally involved extensive discussion and consideration of all implications. Camilla stood near the tall windows overlooking the palace gardens, her posture rigid with barely controlled anger. She had changed from her earlier navy suit into a deep purple dress that somehow emphasized her mood and determination. Margaret, this was not simply a matter of poor consultation. This was a deliberate attempt to elevate Catherine's status in ways that undermine the established hierarchy of our family. The Queen Consort's personal staff had rallied around her with the loyalty that years of mutual respect and shared challenges had created. They understood that Camilla's position had always been more precarious than that of other family members, requiring constant vigilance and careful management of relationships and perceptions. Your Majesty, ventured James Pemberton, the Queen Consort's press secretary, perhaps we should consider how to frame this development in a way that emphasizes your continued importance and leadership within the royal family. Camilla turned from the window, her expression sharp with newfound resolve. James, I am not interested in framing anything. I am interested in ensuring that proper protocols are followed and that decisions affecting our family are made with appropriate consultation and consideration. Meanwhile, in another wing of the palace, Kate was struggling with her own complex emotions about the morning's events. She had returned to her private office where her assistant, Sarah Collins, was reviewing the day's schedule of appointments and engagements. Your Royal Highness, Sarah said gently, noticing Kate's subdued demeanor. Is everything all right? You seem quite concerned about something. Kate looked down at the Royal Victorian chain that still adorned her shoulders, its weight serving as a constant reminder of the controversy it had created. Sarah, sometimes honors come with complications that make them feel less like celebrations and more like burdens. The Princess of Wales had always prided herself on her ability to navigate royal family dynamics with sensitivity and grace. The idea that her recognition had caused such a dramatic confrontation between the king and queen consort was deeply troubling to her sense of harmony and family unity. News of the extraordinary honor had also reached other members of the royal family, creating ripple effects throughout the extended network of relatives, advisors, and staff who made up the broader royal household. Prince William, upon learning of his wife's recognition, felt a mixture of pride and concern that mirrored Kate's own conflicted emotions. The king clearly has tremendous faith in Catherine's contributions and her future role, William confided to his private secretary during a brief conversation about adjusting his schedule to accommodate potential family meetings. However, I worry about the timing and the apparent lack of family consultation that seems to have upset Camilla. The palace staff, who had witnessed countless family disagreements over the years, recognized that this situation was different from the usual diplomatic tensions that occasionally arose between family members. The directness of the confrontation and the public nature of the honor meant that the conflict could not be contained within private family discussions. By afternoon, Camilla had begun implementing what could only be described as a strategic response to the morning's events. She requested meetings with senior palace officials, including the Lord Chamberlain and the private secretary to the sovereign, ostensibly to discuss upcoming royal engagements, but actually to express her concerns about protocol breaches and consultation procedures. Lord Chamberlain, Camilla said during her meeting with Sir Andrew Morrison, I am concerned about the precedent being set when major honors are bestowed without the traditional consultation process. Such decisions affect not only the recipients but also the broader family dynamic and public perception of our institution. Sir Andrew, a seasoned diplomat who had navigated numerous royal family crises during his tenure, recognized the delicate nature of the situation. Your Majesty, the Royal Victorian chain is indeed within His Majesty's personal gift, but I understand your concerns about the broader implications of such decisions. Camilla's meetings throughout the afternoon were carefully orchestrated to build support for her position while maintaining the appearance of concern for proper protocol rather than personal grievance. She was too experienced in royal politics to make her opposition appear petty or self-serving. The queen consort also reached out to trusted allies outside the immediate palace circle, including several senior members of the aristocracy who had supported her through difficult periods and understood the importance of maintaining established hierarchies within the royal system. As evening approached, it became clear that the morning's confrontation had unleashed forces that would not be easily contained or resolved. The battle between tradition and modernization, between established protocol and personal recognition, was spreading throughout the royal household and threatening to create lasting divisions within the family structure. Charles, meanwhile, remained in his study throughout much of the day, dealing with the regular business of monarchy while also contemplating the personal cost of his decision to honor Kate. He knew that Camilla's reaction was just the beginning of a larger struggle that would test both his authority as monarch and his relationships within the family he led. The stage was set for a conflict that would challenge the very foundations of royal family unity and force everyone involved to choose sides in a battle that had implications far beyond a single honor or recognition ceremony. 3 weeks after the explosive confrontation in the king's study, the effects of that dramatic morning continued to reverberate throughout the royal household and beyond. What had begun as a private family disagreement had evolved into a complex web of alliances, subtle negotiations, and careful diplomatic maneuvering that tested the very foundations of royal family unity. The Royal Victorian Chain Ceremony had been officially announced to the public, generating tremendous positive coverage for Kate and widespread celebration of her contributions to the monarchy. The British people, largely unaware of the family drama that had surrounded the honor, embraced the recognition as long overdue acknowledgement of their beloved Princess of Wales. However, behind the palace walls, the situation remained tense and unresolved. Camilla had not spoken directly to Charles since their confrontation, communicating instead through formal channels and intermediaries when royal duties required coordination. The queen consort had maintained her public schedule and royal obligations with characteristic professionalism, but those close to her could sense the underlying strain and determination that drove her. Continued efforts to assert her position, Kate found herself in an increasingly difficult position as both Charles and Camilla sought to use her as a symbol in their ongoing struggle. The king continued to emphasize her importance to the monarchy's future, scheduling high-profile engagements and ensuring that her Royal Victorian chain was prominently featured in official photographs and ceremonies. Meanwhile, Camilla had begun what could only be described as a charm offensive, working to strengthen her relationships with other family members and to demonstrate her own indispensable role within the royal structure. The queen consort had increased her charitable activities, taken on additional patronages, and made several well-received public speeches that reminded everyone of her years of dedicated service. The broader royal family had been forced to navigate the delicate dynamics of the situation, with some members expressing private support for Camilla's concerns about protocol, while others admired Charles's bold recognition of Kate's contributions. Prince William found himself in the particularly challenging position of supporting his wife while trying to maintain family harmony. The situation has become untenable, William confided to his father during a private meeting in the king's study, the same room where the original confrontation had occurred. Catherine is deeply troubled by the ongoing tension, and Camilla's obvious displeasure is affecting family gatherings and official functions. Charles looked up from the documents he had been reviewing, his expression showing the strain of weeks of family conflict. William, I understand everyone's discomfort, but I cannot allow proper recognition of merit to be undermined by concerns about personal feelings or traditional hierarchies. The Prince of Wales shook his head, his frustration evident. Father, this is not about undermining recognition. This is about finding a way to honor Catherine's contributions, while maintaining family unity and respecting Camilla's position as your queen consort. Charles set down his pen and faced his son directly. And how exactly do you propose to accomplish that? Camilla made it clear that she views any elevation of Catherine's status as a diminishment of her own position. There is no middle ground that satisfies both objectives. The conversation revealed the fundamental challenge that the royal family faced: how to evolve and modernize while maintaining the stability and unity that the institution required. Charles's decision to honor Kate had been based on his vision of the monarchy's future needs, but it had come at the cost of present family harmony. Meanwhile, Kate had been working behind the scenes to find a resolution that could restore peace within the family. She had requested private meetings with several senior royal advisors, seeking their guidance on how to navigate the complex situation without appearing to take sides in the conflict between Charles and Camilla. Perhaps, Kate suggested to Sir Andrew Morrison during one such meeting, there is a way to frame my recognition as complementary to Queen Camilla's role, rather than competitive with it. The monarchy is large enough to celebrate multiple contributions without creating hierarchical conflicts. Sir Andrew appreciated Kate's diplomatic instincts, but he also understood the deeper issues at play. Your Royal Highness, the challenge is that the Royal Victorian chain represents the highest level of personal recognition from the monarch. It is difficult to present such an honor as anything other than a statement about the recipient's exceptional importance. The situation reached a turning point when Camilla finally requested a private meeting with Kate, the first direct communication between the two women since the morning of the confrontation. The meeting was scheduled to take place in Camilla's private sitting room, neutral territory where both women could speak freely without the formal constraints of official protocol. When Kate arrived at the appointed time, she found Camilla waiting with tea service arranged on the elegant coffee table between two comfortable chairs. The Queen Consort's demeanor was composed but serious, suggesting that this would be a substantive conversation rather than a social pleasantry. Catherine, Camilla began after they had settled with their tea, I believe it is time for us to discuss the situation that has developed between Charles and myself regarding your recent recognition. Kate set down her teacup carefully, recognizing the importance of the moment. Your Majesty, I want you to know that I never sought this honor, and certainly never intended for it to create conflict within our family. Camilla studied Kate's expression for a moment before responding. I understand that you did not seek this recognition, Catherine. However, the honor has been bestowed, and we must now determine how to move forward in a way that serves both our family's interests and the monarchy's needs. The conversation that followed would prove to be the beginning of a new understanding between the two women, one that acknowledged both the legitimate nature of Kate's recognition and the importance of Camilla's position as Queen Consort. Through careful negotiation and mutual respect, they began to forge a path forward that could potentially heal the royal family's wounds while preserving the significance of the honor that had started the entire controversy. The resolution of the royal chaos would require compromise, understanding, and a redefinition of how the monarchy could embrace both tradition and change without sacrificing the unity that remained essential to its continued success.